Podcast download numbers. It's our currency, isn't it, as podcasters? It's the thing that we're perhaps the most protective about. But is that the right thing? Should we actually be sharing our podcast download numbers? Well, I think the answer depends, and that's what we're going to dig into today here on Le Podcast Accelerator, which is the only French that I know. So welcome to the show. I'm Mark Asquith, of course, the CEO and co-founder of Rebel Base Media, and that bloody British podcast guy. So welcome to the Podcast Accelerator. It's always fun to be doing this. Welcome to 2020. Hope you enjoyed the show last week. It was nice to get back into the swing of things, and thanks for everyone who sent me the kind words via email. I appreciate you a heck of a lot. So like I said, we are going to talk about whether or not you should announce your download numbers in a second or two. It's quite an interesting subject, actually. It's something that you don't actually see that much about, but a lot of people ask about it, and no one really knows the answer, because I don't know if the answer is as clear-cut as many people think. I think many people look for a yes or a no, and I'm not sure that it's that clear-cut. So we'll get to that in a second, but I just want to give the guys at AWeber a shout, of course. We work together on a heck of a lot of stuff. You know, I mean, ultimately, we're a Rebel Base Media. We're a software company. We make podcast websites. We, of course, make Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host. And you know, a big part of our marketing, as much as we love podcasting, a big part of our marketing has to focus on software sales. You know, we are selling the hosting platform. We are selling podcast websites. And a huge part of that is email marketing. But as a podcaster, we often underestimate the power of communicating via email, and it's so important to own the data that you can use to market whatever it is you want to market. You know, people are saying, you know, build your show kind of community over on any number of these new apps that are popping up, or over on Facebook or whatever. No. You need to be building your email list, all right? So AWeber have put together this onboarding process where, if you're a podcaster, they've put together a preset campaign that you can instantly use to welcome your new subscribers to your email list. So what I'm saying here is they've taken out all of the work for you as a podcaster, all right? So go ahead and check out AWeber. I think you can get 30 days actually free just for looking at this show. So go and check it out, markasquith.com/AWeber. So podcasters' currency is download numbers, right? It's what we sell more often than not. So how protective should we be over those numbers, and should we announce them publicly? This is something that I saw in I think it was maybe the Podcast Movement Facebook group, and someone said, you know, should I announce these download numbers publicly? And it kind of got me thinking, because I don't think there's a really straight answer to this. I don't think there's a yes or a no. Let's just kind of dig into some ideas. I mean, you know, first and foremost, if you are selling sponsorship based on your download numbers, you can't be lying about them, all right? You can't be BSing them, because it will come out in the wash. Either your ROI for your brand or your sponsor is not going to be there because you've inflated your numbers. They're not going to renew because they don't see any ROI. And, you know, ultimately lying about your download numbers is terrible. It will always come out in the wash. You should never, ever do that. But believe it or not, I know podcasters that have done that in the past just to try and get some CPM-based sponsorship. It's silly to even consider doing that. So with that in mind, you know, you've got to be announcing your download numbers to any sponsors that you get anyway. And I think the kind of fear of announcing the download numbers comes from sort of a looking over the fence, like a keeping up with the Joneses kind of scenario, because you see the quote-unquote big podcasters saying, "Way, just hit 10 million downloads. Way, just hit this, just hit that." And if you're a podcast that's just started up about a niche thing in your local community, you ain't going to get those 10 million downloads anytime soon. So you feel bad if you got 50 downloads an episode. And I think people compare themselves to the wrong thing. So then they get worried about, well, if I share my download numbers, actually, you know, it's going to make me look silly. I'm going to feel inadequate. That is not the case. You know, we're all just trying to generate more downloads. And for the most time, you'll find that podcasters don't have that many downloads. It doesn't matter who you think they are. I would imagine that their downloads are probably less than you expect. Doesn't matter who you think they are, okay? So whilst I'm not saying you should go and plaster your download numbers all over the place like those bloody income reports that you see from people online, I think that you've got to understand the reasoning behind not sharing your download numbers is just a very personal choice. What I don't want you to do is think, oh, I don't want to share my download numbers because I'm not as good as everyone else. You are as good as everyone else, all right? Everyone is in the same boat with this. We're all just trying to build our audience up. And you need to be really careful about, you know, the why behind the decision to share or not to share your download numbers. If you're not sharing because you're worried about being compared to everyone else, please don't worry about that, all right? But if you don't want to share it because, well, that's a private number, some people have got different levels of privacy. That's fine. If you feel that's a private number you want to keep to yourself, that's all good. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't do it through fear. Don't keep the numbers to yourself through fear. Now, as long as you aren't BSing your numbers and you're not selling to a sponsor and saying, well, actually, I've got 1,000 downloads per episode or 2,000. Actually, you've only got 500 or 200. That's when it becomes, that's an entirely different conversation. Sure, you're not going to want to share because if your sponsor sees it, you're going to get pulled up on it. But let's take this from a different perspective. Maybe you're asking for help online. And people are saying, okay, how do I grow my podcast? Well, how can we possibly help you online if you're not willing to tell us where you're at already? Now, what I mean by this is that, to grow a show from 1,000 downloads to 10,000 downloads is a very different problem to growing a show from no listeners to 100 listeners per episode, and from 100 to 500 and 500 to 1,000. They're all very different scenarios that require very different approaches. So if you're comfortable and if you are asking for help, let's talk context. If the context that you're actually asking people questions is from the perspective of how do I grow my show, the people that are answering will benefit from understanding where you are now, okay? And there's nothing wrong in that scenario as long as you're comfortable in sharing your download numbers. Heck, if you've got 20 people listening to your show every episode, that's 20 people. Like 20 real-life people listening to you. Like, that's a pretty good deal. If you could fill a room every week with 20 people to listen to you talk, you'd probably be pretty happy about that, So you don't have to be embarrassed about it. So just think of context. I understand that download numbers can be a very personal thing for people. That's fine. But don't expect to get the very, very best help when you're asking, how do I grow my show, if you're not willing to disclose some of that information, all right? So just use that wisely. I think my advice today, and I'm just trying to kind of distill this in my head as I'm talking, I think my advice today is just be pragmatic about the use of your download numbers, all right? Don't frivolously share them for the sake of it. But at the same time, if you need help, you are going to have to let people in, okay? Don't lie about your numbers to your sponsors because it will come out. Don't lie about your numbers to anyone because it's ridiculous to do that. You don't have to inflate your progress, all right? Like I said, podcasting is not a medium where we're measured by numbers, okay? And what I mean by that is it's like, I don't give a crap about what your numbers are as long as you enjoy it and as long as you're doing well for yourself, all right? Just like you don't care about the next person's downloads, okay? The only people that care are the sponsors, the networks, and so on. And when you get to the realms of even needing to worry about sponsors and networks, chances are you're probably doing well enough to not have to worry about sharing them, all right? So just remember that. Please just remember that. Don't be embarrassed, all right? This is your show. Everyone's here to help you. It's not anything that you need to be embarrassed about, your downloads, okay? We're all in this together. So just remember that, all right? And thanks for joining me. I always enjoy talking to you here on the Podcast Accelerator. Please go and check out Captivate.fm for your podcast hosts and your analytics needs. Fantastic platform. We've had a slew of sign-ups over the weekend as normal, so I'm going to be welcoming those guys via a personal video in just a second after I've recorded this. So please go and check out Captivate.fm. We've got some amazing new features coming down the wire over the next couple of weeks as well. And until the next time, please tell your friends in podcasting if you like this episode, if you like the show, please tell them. Go ahead and head over to Podchaser, give us a review over there. I really mean it. It means so much when I see people really benefiting from this. So if you do like it, go to podchaser.com. Give me a little review. I'd really appreciate you doing that. And until the next time, thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day. And never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.